Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is Bucket Ponds, and today we are going to review 4 sealed ecospheres that I built 1.5 years ago, to be precise. So I used some 1-quart mason jars, a bit like this here, with the sealed lid, of course, to build some beautiful sealed nano aquariums. The goal was to, create a little world where life can thrive inside of a sealed environment. And with algae acting as the main food source, algae and bacteria, with plants providing air and water filtration, and with some snails and invertebrates living inside. That was my goal anyway. So let's review the jars and see how they worked out. This is number 1. Yes, this was the first one. And it was built approximately, 5/7/23. You can see my very janky label system here. I eventually did upgrade to much better labels on the lid itself. And the lid has remained sealed all this time. There you go. The lid has remained sealed. It's a bit dusty because they have been in storage for over a year on my windowsill. But looking at number 1 here, she doesn't look too great. There is some algae growth in here. There's some green stuff, which is a good sign. But just because you have some algae doesn't necessarily mean that anything else has survived. I don't see any microfauna. I don't see any type of fungal or other growth other than just this bit of algae down here, which is interesting. But without anything to cohabitate with it, it's somewhat disappointing as far as an ecosystem would go. Having this on my shelf or something, I don't think it would get much attention. I don't think anybody would really want to talk about it. So yeah, I would say number 1 here is a failure. We have no microfauna, just a little algae inside. And that's okay. With each, with each experiment we have learned, we have grown and adapted. So for number 2, we did things a little differently. I used a little bit more substrate and a little bit more material down here. There you go. And number 2 looks pretty good. Yeah, a lot of spike rush in here. Let's get a little closer. But you can see here, lots of life. We have a lot of ostracods in here. Those are those tiny little guys darting around. We get them into focus, mostly. We have some algae growth in here as well. All right, so right away I can see that we do have some life here in number 2. Let me get my flashlight, that might help so brighten things up a little bit. But we have some algae growth in here, we have some spike rush. I also tried to add some moss into this project, I believe, and the moss, it seems, did not survive. But the spike rush is doing well. Recently I built a spike rush nursery, and I explained to you that it has powered many of my ecospheres, and this is a prime example. This little ecosphere is successful. We have ostracods in here swimming around. We have plants growing, producing oxygen through photosynthesis. And we have a nice little ecosystem. These ostracods, though they are tiny and very hard to see, they are most likely feeding on algae and possibly on bacteria, which is fine. That's good. That's the building block of our initial ecosystem. Looking a little higher in the jar. Forgive me for the lighting, you guys. Lighting's always been a challenge for us here at Bucket Ponds. But we actually have some plants up here at the surface as well. There we go. There we go. So that is actually a spike rush plant that has gotten established up here on the glass, sticking up out of the water. Very, very interesting. Spike rush is really cool, and it will find a way. Life will find a way. Well, spike rush will find a way. It will grow up here on the glass even, without any type of soil or substrate, which is really, really cool. So I would say that number 2 is far more successful than number 1. Much better tank. Now, number 2 was built in a double video with number 3. We built these at the same time. And these are from 5/23/23. So number 3 was a bit of a attempt at minimalism. That's what I'll say. I wanted to have just the very basics in here. Nice, clean little ecosphere. We don't have much life down here in the lower portion, though I do see some little black specks here and there. And you see them? Those little like pepper specks spread down here into the algae. Those are actually water mites. Those are aquatic arachnids, very much related to ticks and spiders. And I think that's really cool that they have survived in here for so long. I do see a few ostracods as well. Let's get our macro lens and see if we can get a little closer. But first, I do see a very special friend in here. Right up top there, it might be a little hard to see from this angle, but that little dark thing is a bladder snail. That is a small bladder snail. No doubt a full-grown adult. They just tend to stay small in small situations like this, either through lack of food or some kind of survival mechanism. I call it dwarfing, which I hope is not offensive to anyone. But yeah, they stay small, a bit like an animal on an island with only so much food. You know, their growth is stunted. But he is alive, and that's a great sign. So this Ecosphere number 3 is able to support at least 1 or 2 bladder snails. Let's get our macro lens and take a look down there at the bottom to check out those water mites. Alright, so these little guys are among the smallest creatures that I raise here. And as far as I can tell, they tend to feed on plants. And that's okay. Yeah. So I'm trying to get a good shot, but it is very difficult. And we have a number of creatures slithering by. Alright, so it seems that we have a number of planaria in here. And I know everyone hates them, but in a nano ecosystem, a sealed ecosystem like this, they're very interesting to see them surviving. They've been in here for over a year. Yeah, and so the tank, it looks very interesting at this scale. These water mites are most likely eating plants. They're probably feeding on the spike rush, I would imagine. And that's okay. They may be feeding on some other elements in here as well. The planaria, I imagine, are eating anything. Probably snail eggs here and there. I see a few small detritus worms as well. So ultimately, number 3 is a big success. We have a fair amount of life in here. We have some live plants and quite a few different species. Let's check out number 4. So number 4 was built on 6/20/23, and I used a different plant mixture for this project. I used a bunch of our moss, the same moss that we grow in the moss farms, of which I recently uploaded a video. There's like 3 or 4 moss farm videos at this point. But this is a good example of what this moss does underwater. It cannot rely on sexual propagation, so instead it goes asexual. It grows these long strands that it then relies on them breaking up and starting new bits of moss elsewhere. I think it's a really cool adaptation, and I think it's really interesting. Apparently it works very well for our nano ecosystems. We see quite a bit of the the little black pepper dots all throughout the tank, and those are all live water mites. Yeah. So this is a jar of water spiders, essentially. Water ticks, whatever you want to call them. But fear not, you know, they feed on plant matter. They like to sap juices out of the moss. And the fact that there's so much moss, I guess that means there's so many water mites. This also shows me that we are very much capable of breeding them, indirectly. I have no idea how their breeding cycle works, but apparently it does work quite well. So let's get our flashlight and take a closer look. There we go. Check it out, you guys. That is beautiful. Look at all the life in there. I may be mistaken, you guys. These guys are moving a lot like ostracods. Generally, our water mites are much more static. We'll say static, as in they don't move much. They typically stay put, they feed, and they might move a little with their little legs, but these guys are moving quite often. I don't know if I'll be able to see any better with the macro lens. Let's give it a shot. That's probably about the best we're going to get. But you'll see a few ostracods here and there, and you'll see a few of our water mites as well. There's also most likely some worms in here of one type or another. I'm looking to see if we can find some, though they might be lost in the moss, you could say. These are my little zebra ostracods. I don't know what else to call them. They are a smaller species. Lately, I've been capturing and raising much larger ostracods. Actually, they came to us through some black cow manure, some soil I purchased. It's a long story, but yes, these are my smaller, more docile ostracods. I hope you guys don't mind my flashlight being used for this. It helps viewing a little bit. I'm always struggling with lighting, you know. We do have some growth up here on the surface of the tank as well. Some bacterial growth, it looks like, maybe fungus. Hard to say. We also have quite a dense mold layer, which is a surprise. Lots and lots of mold. And that's from our pets eating plant matter and excreting it as well. The moss is also very clean. This is perfectly clean moss. It's beautiful. This is the good stuff. And that's because our pets inside are keeping it very clean, our ostracods anyway, and our water mites are actually feeding on the moss, which might explain why some of it has wilted. But ultimately, this is a living, breathing ecosystem, all contained within a quart jar. And I think it's beautiful, you guys. I'm very happy with this. The others, they're not bad. 2, 3, they're very cool. But 4, I could give an ecosphere like this to someone and be proud of it as a gift. I would love to sell projects like this, but I don't see much of a market for it, But I wouldn't be embarrassed to hand out ecospheres like this. So number 4, huge success. So that's it, guys. I hope that you enjoyed this update. That's one big thing for bucket ponds. I try to make sure that, when I build something, we check up on it again later. I see too many videos where somebody will build like a cool aquarium and then we never see it again. And, you might be asking yourself, why did I have so much air in these ecosystems, these ecospheres? Why didn't I fill it all the way up? And that's a very important question. That's a very good question. See, I was thinking if we took a jar and you fill it all the way up to here, that's not really going to work, right? You're trying to make a model of life on Earth, and Earth has a lot of atmosphere. It's not completely water, you know what I mean? I'm not trying to build a polydarium with these, but I was thinking that larger airspace might help with the oxygen transfer into the water, which would allow more creatures to live inside. Starting off with a very small little bit of oxygen versus a large amount of water, that doesn't seem like a good idea. There's not much O2 to get dissolved into that water. So I like to start them with about half air, half water, and judge for yourself. After a year, they did okay. This one that was 2/3 water, 1/3 air, did the best. So, yeah. I hope that you enjoyed my first live voiceover. I'm sure it sounded a little bit different than what I usually upload. But it's fun to capture reactions in the moment instead of me recording it after the fact like this. Really quick, I wanted to say a special thank you to our buddy Clay Wise. You can find him on Facebook at A Wise Creation, and you can find him on YouTube at Wise Fishkeeping. I'm trying not to dwell on the hurricane, but it took a lot from us, you guys. 2 weeks without power killed many of my aquariums and ecosystems. But Clay has been a solid buddy. He stuck in contact with me the whole time as I camped out for 2 weeks with no power. Clay has sent a awesome custom bucket ponds keychain along with some mental health awareness items and more shrimp and killifish. So thank you so much, Clay. You did not have to do that. I feel really guilty. But I am extremely grateful, not just for what you sent, but for the friendship, for staying in contact. Especially in this hobby where we all tend to operate in a vacuum. You can't really go to the pet shop and talk to the guy about, building a sealed jar aquarium or something like that. But when you find a like-minded friend, it opens up a lot of possibilities and you guys can improve upon each other's ideas. It's a great thing. So check out Clay's YouTube page and definitely check out his Facebook page for these awesome engraved items. We'll keep having fun building jar aquariums, plant nurseries, sealed ecosystems, all sorts of fun stuff. Please check out the videos that are appearing on your screen right now if I remembered to set them up correctly. And definitely check out Clay's Facebook page and his YouTube channel. Links in the description to both. Thank you.